Welcome, as Alyssa has already said, and as more people come in, we continue to welcome you. If you haven't already, share your location, your role, and some thoughts about what makes professional development meaningful to you. This webinar is focusing on the importance of investing in ongoing professional development. My name is Kate Conway. I am a curriculum and instructional designer for leadership at Responsive Classroom at the Center for Responsive Schools. I am located in Kauai, Hawaii. I have taught all divisions of school from pre-K to high school and been an administrator as well. Most recently, head of school at a school here on Kauai. And I am really excited to be here with my colleague Alyssa, who will introduce herself.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Kate. My name is Alyssa Brunner. I work with Kate in responsive classroom programs as a curriculum and instructional designer, where I focus on elementary school because before doing this work, I taught first and second and then fifth grades. I live in Washington, D.C., where it is very dark and stormy. So I'm hoping that my internet stays nice and crisp for you all, but just a warning that there's a chance it will not. I'm just going to give a nod to Kristen, who's here. If you can wave, Kristen. She's going to turn her camera off and kind of be in the background, but she's the director of marketing with Responsive Classroom Programs, and she's here to help us out, to share with you in the chat some valuable resources to help you along the way today. And then we are joined by our amazing panelists. So I'm going to send it over to them to introduce themselves, and we'll start with Joe.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kristen. I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm Joe Tilley. I'm coming to you from non-stormy, very sunny, delightful Nashville, Tennessee, where my Tennessee Vols just kicked off in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. So fingers crossed for that. But with that said, I'm an administrator teacher here in the Nashville area, specializing in special education. In the past, I've worked with Responsive Classroom full time, and then had a variety of other positions in administrative roles throughout the Nashville area. So I believe Lyn is after me.
Great. Hello. Nice to see everyone here. I'm Lyn, and I am in the UK, which is usually a rainy place. It's actually about 11 p.m. at night here now. But we've had sun today. It's been about 18 degrees Celsius, which is, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's something close to it, something close to like 60 or something. But it was nice and warm and sunny for once. So everyone's in a good mood here, which is great. I'm a consulting teacher for Responsive Classroom. I've been doing this for, I think, 3-4 years now. And I have taught in every grade from pre-K to grade 12. I've been a literacy specialist. And I'm currently in administration. Again, I'm a lower school assistant principal at an international school in Surrey, outside of London in the UK. And Megan is next.
Hi, my name is Megan Florentine. I am coming to you from Greenwich, Connecticut. I see a lot of people in the chat are also from Connecticut, so that's a nice connection. Here in Greenwich, I am the director of a nursery school. We serve children ages 2 to 5. Previous to my work as an administrator, I was a teacher for 20 years. I taught second grade. I was a pull-out reading specialist. I taught kindergarten for a long stretch. I also worked on professional development at my school, working with groups of teachers and the whole faculty on responsive classroom practices in their own classroom spaces. I have been a consulting teacher for responsive classroom since 2019 and really, really enjoy that work that I get to do in the summers mainly.
Thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. Before we dive into the content, I wanted to give a few webinar tips just to make sure that this goes as smoothly as possible. The first thing is to close out any other programs or browsers that you have if you're experiencing a lag, as that can help maximize your bandwidth if this is the only thing you have running. And of course, the good old exit and re-enter if you need to. If you're experiencing a lag as well, you can always leave the Zoom room and then return. You've already located the chat feature, so this is a really great way throughout our time together today to make any positive comments and connections with one another and to share anything that you want to share with the entire group. We're here to learn from you as well, and you will get that chat transcript, which brings me to the bottom right, when you get the recording. So anything that you have to share about professional development and ideas that you have, we would love to hear that as well. And the recording of this time together will be sent to you in a few days. It'll also be posted to our YouTube channel. Finally, we do have a Q&A feature. If you hover over the bottom bar of your Zoom screen, you can find the Q&A. The way that works is it comes directly to anyone that you can see on your screen for us to either answer by typing into it, or if time allows at the end of our session, we will answer some of those questions live. So as we're sharing and as we're talking, if there's anything that you want us to address as a group, please send it in that Q&A feature so that we can make sure we see it and it doesn't get buried in the chat. Okay, you're on mute.
You would think by now I would have gotten that, but to start off, we want to share with you our learning goals for the webinar so that you can take a look at them and perhaps choose one to focus on for our time together today.
All right, so let's get into it. So I'm going to invite you to think back if you were here at the beginning, or think about this question right now. And you can share if you didn't earlier. But what is one thing that you find makes professional development especially engaging? So you can look back through the chat or read what's coming in now. I'll share a few things that I saw as well in just a moment. What's one thing in a PD that makes it especially engaging? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of this idea of it being like immediately applicable, it being very relatable and practical to what we're doing. I also saw earlier that there was a lot about having it be interactive and engaging and differentiated, connecting with others and interacting. Yeah. Keep those ideas coming. So as we're thinking about effective professional developments for adults, we really need to think about how adults have the need to be active and interactive in their own classroom environments, just as students do, and that they learn best through social interactions, just like children do as well. So as adults, we really need to be actively engaged with our discussion leader, with one another, and with the content being presented in order to do our best learning. So in order to do that, we also need the environment to promote risk-taking in a comfortable way that honors honest and respectful dialogue.
So there are, as in all areas, organizations that look at what are best practices and what should the standards be in professional development. One of those leading thought organizations on professional development is called Learning Forward. And they outline 3 areas that professional development should include. One is rigorous content for each learner that they can apply to their work. So this is echoing what you all have shared in the chat. Another is transformational processes where, quote, educators learn in ways that sustain significant changes in their knowledge, skills, practices, and mindsets, unquote. And lastly, conditions for success, including a culture of collaborative inquiry. So as, again, many of you have already written, the idea of engaging, working together, and really having useful professional development that affects what you do in your practice in the classroom. Learning Forward is a great website to go check out. So we've linked that there at the bottom of the slide, should you wish to have a look at that.
So when we think about these learning forward standards and we keep those broad standards in mind, we can also look at the research brief published by the Learning Policy Institute that describes specific characteristics of effective teacher development, professional development, and those are the following. The first is that the professional development must be content focused in order for it to be effective. It also should incorporate active learning utilizing adult learning theory. It should support collaboration, typically in job-embedded contexts. So a lot of you were talking about this, talking with one another and having it be really relatable to your own context. It should also use models and modeling of effective practices so that we can see it firsthand. It also provides coaching and expert support. It offers opportunities for feedback and reflection in order to consolidate and activate the learning. And it should be of sustained duration with appropriate breaks as needed. So as we're thinking about this, we're thinking of the summary of effective professional development and what makes it so helpful and important and engaging. We're going to keep all of that in mind, plus what you've all brainstormed as we hear from our panelists to dig a little deeper and hear really what they would like to share and elaborate on when they think of ongoing professional development.
All right. So we are going to transition to our panelists. And panelists, we just heard what the Learning Policy Institute shared as important characteristics for effective professional development. But in your opinion and in your roles, what characteristics of ongoing embedded professional development do you look for and why? Let's start with Lyn.
Great. So one thing that we're looking for is the flexibility. So in the post-COVID era that we're in, we have teachers or educators who really want to get away from that online learning and be in person and interactive, and those who found that that really worked for them, being online and having that kind of learning, or just having those short spurts of learning online as well. So a short class or a course over a few days where you can fit it in around other things. So that flexibility is really important for just the different ways that people learn. Also, just making sure that the professional development is practical and there's something to put in your pocket to take out soon after. So you can put it in your pocket, take it out the next time you're in a classroom and just use it right away. So there's practical strategies, energizers, for example, things like that that you can use straight away.
I would add to that for me, the two words that stick out when I think of effective professional development are collaborative and interactive. I think when we allow teachers to talk and work together around the content, I think that's really where the learning sticks most for them and where they can really sort of slot it into what they already know. I also feel like, as my colleagues Alyssa and Kate have already shared, the research shows us that great social interaction leads to lasting learning. This is true for our students, but this is true for adult learners too, like the educators in our building. So when we give them an opportunity to collaborate and talk about the learning that they're doing, this isn't a waste of time. This is the most effective way to make the learning stick for them and also respect them as adults in a workplace who have an opportunity to share with each other and learn from each other.
Excuse me, building on that and just kind of building on what everybody has said, the thing that I hear the most, and I do think it's the thing that is at the top of the mind for teachers, is this relevancy aspect. They want things that are relevant to what they're doing. time is of the essence today in today's education setting, and everyone is pressed for time. Everyone is stretched for time. And so when we're asking people to give up 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, or even 15 minutes for a quick hallway conversation, they want to walk away with something that is relevant to what they're doing. They don't want to sit through things that don't involve them. So asking somebody who teaches ELA to sit through a math professional development, it's not relevant for them. And so people want relevancy. And this is true amongst all staff. This isn't just educators. And I shouldn't even say it that way. This isn't assigned teachers, right? This is also people that we're asking to come, paraprofessionals, classroom assistants, things like that. They want things that are relevant to what they're doing as well, because everyone wants to go back and increase what those overall outcomes are. And so the things that I hear the most is, make this relevant for me, make this worth my time, give me that strategy to walk back into my room tomorrow and put it together.
Thank you all for sharing. And as you're saying that, Joe, it's making me think of the importance of sharing why. Like, why is this important and how does this help you, right? To make that connection, if it's not already super upfront for the teachers, that you can help them get there by giving that why. And as we were all saying, like the ultimate goal is to support teachers, right? So we're thinking of these ways that this development can really improve their practice or hone in on certain skills. And we want them to be effective and we want them to be successful in their classrooms. So our next question for you is, what types of ongoing professional development have you done to boost teacher effectiveness?
I'm happy to start on this one. For me, my favorite go-to when doing teacher professional development that I feel really boosts effectiveness are book clubs, specifically using responsive classroom texts. You can get small groups of teachers together. I always think it's best if it's on a voluntary basis. I think that boosts morale and enthusiasm for the book club. Some of my favorites that I've done in the past, Yardsticks. Yardsticks is great always, but it's particularly great now that we're seeing developmental differences in children post-COVID, and we're sort of wondering how to reckon with those things. So I feel like Yardsticks is particularly applicable both to new teachers and veteran teachers. Additionally, my number one favorite book to use is The Power of Our Words. That gets to such the fundamental heart of the responsive classroom practice, which is how we speak and communicate with our students and how we communicate with colleagues. That is a powerful book for teachers of all different years of service. One of my most beloved book clubs of years past was the special teachers at a school I used to work at. We got together and we read the responsive classroom book for special area educators, and it was transformative for a lot of their practices. These groups boosted the sense of collegiality we had with each other. They boosted morale. They gave people things to try. We would high five each other when we saw them doing different practices. And additionally, one thing I'll just add is setting up a faculty meeting, like a morning meeting, is also, I think, a really wonderful way to make professional learning feel accessible and comfortable for everyone.
Megan, I'm going to build on you talking about power of our words in particular. It's something that, and I'm just going to call it out. Post-COVID, I think that words have really become something that matter even more than they did before, and they were already important. I think the importance of understanding how language can be leveraged, how language can be that thing that hinders or helps, that thing that stands in the way of and builds walls, or it helps to tear down walls with students. I think it's really important. I also think that there's there's this weird thing that's happening across all the schools that I work with and everything, where I'm starting to notice that language between adults is becoming more and more critical as well. There's a generational issue that is arising within education. The generation that is entering education has a different way of communicating. And those of us that have been here a little bit longer and have a little bit more gray, perhaps we prefer a different type of communication. And so I think it's also trying to make adults aware of the language that they're using with one another, to make sure that expectations amongst adults are just as clear as they are amongst students. And I know I've had to work on developing my language a little bit to work with people. And so it is an interesting time to be in that space. But the thing that I have noticed is that the beauty of language is when a teacher realizes, when you give them a piece of development or a piece of professional development, whether it's a one-off in the hallway that you say, hey, try this, or it's a 1 hour after school professional development, when you give them that and they go back into the classroom and they try it and they feel that success, they're coming back to you and they want more. And so what I'm starting to notice is that, in particular around language, I'm getting a lot of people just coming in begging for more, begging for more. Okay, this worked. What do you got next for me? This worked. What do you got next for me? And so that language piece is the one that I have a lot of people coming to me and wanting a lot of development around.
Right. I have to echo the language piece as well. I'm really sorry, but it never gets old. It never gets boring. The language is so fundamental in everything that we do. And the book, The Power of Our Words, is really an appropriate title because our words are so powerful. Everything that we say has a huge impact on the way that our students learn, how our students interact with each other, how we interact with each other, the relationships that we build and the connections that we build. And as Joe was saying, even a small shift in your language, even a small thing that you're doing, it can make such a huge difference. And that's something that people are always hungry for more, always wanting to try something else. But even a small shift, even a small shift in your language can take months or even years to really solidify that. So it's something that language is a lifelong journey that you can always be working on. I mean, I've been using Responsive Classroom, the approach, for 26 years now, and I'm still improving my language every single day. Another thing that I find really helpful is, in terms of just Responsive Classroom in general, is using that Responsive Classroom assessment tool as an internal PD in your division or in your building or within your teams. It can also be used individually. It's something that anyone can pick up, and it just gives you a lot of guidance along the way of how you're progressing as a teacher with the Responsive Classroom approaches and what you need to do next and how you can continue on that journey that is ongoing throughout your life.
Sorry, just getting to my mute button again. Thank you all for sharing so much of that. When we think of sharing and implementing professional development, I think one thing that we've touched upon but not dug into quite so deeply is the constraint of time, that we are all very busy, administrators, teachers alike. And there's a sense that there's a lot of competing priorities, and will this really be worth it? How do we make the most of our time? So I think it was Megan in the very beginning of the last question, talked about using a morning meeting model for your faculty meetings. And I think that doing as much as we can with using those practices, modeling those practices throughout different meetings that we're having as teacher leaders, as administrators, as so forth, to really bring those practices alive is another way of working on that time. And I'm wondering from all of the panelists, what your thoughts are on how do you facilitate that bite-sized professional development that's really tailored to your school's needs?
Hey, this is such an interesting question, and I think it's such an important question for where we are with technology today. I think let's just say what we all know. Everybody's somewhat addicted to their iPhones. They're addicted to their Samsungs, and I don't know what other smartphones exist, but we're addicted to technology. We're addicted to the bite-sized pieces. We're addicted to the TikTok videos, the quick little snippets, the 30 seconds, things like that. And, it's a skill to pay attention, right? And it's a skill to pay attention for a long period of time. And so when you take the fact that we are all competing for the same amount of time in a given day with people because of the responsibilities that people have. And then on top of that, we're trying to further develop what their skill set is and what the student outcomes are. It really does lead us to this place where we're constantly looking for those opportunities to give them real bite-sized, quick implement type of moments. One of the things that I have found that most of the people that I work with truly appreciate is low risk modeling, meaning that you come into their room and you jump in and you help them do something and you show them potentially a different way, whether it's a language or it's just a response to something or it's proactive, whatever the case is. That moment of showing somebody how it's done might take you just a couple of moments, but it could lead to really significant outcomes for that particular teacher. The other thing that I will say that, and this does take some time, but you can do it in short periods of time over time, is just this idea of cyclical feedback. I think creating, and sometimes I wonder why we're not better with the adult culture in doing this, but creating continuous improvement cycles, creating these opportunities to go in and show people things, talk to people to things, give them feedback, coach them, set a time to come back, look at it again, those kind of things. And I think people really appreciate that. I will say I've had a lot of people who get to a point they crave it. Like if I'm not in their room giving it to them on a weekly basis, then they are emailing me and asking me what's up, like where are you and why aren't you in my room? And then I'll add to that and simply say email. Like, you know, we do have this ability to email things out to people, whether it is videos of short things and just saying, hey, watch this teacher in action. Hey, watch this amazing result from these perspectives. The thing that I always caution people with email is it can't be something that you are 100% expecting to be implemented simply because you kind of lose your ability to have control over it once you've emailed it out to somebody. And so you just want to make sure that from that perspective, you're very clear about what's expected from it. But I do think just finding these opportunities, and the last thing I'll say, and then I will turn it over to the other amazing panelists, is the idea around talking to people about how they want it to look for them. One of the things, you know, I used to always tell people the best expert you're ever going to talk to about whether or not a class is working is the student in the class, right? I mean, because that's who's going to tell you what's working for them. And it's the same way with teachers. We oftentimes design and execute professional development that we are just like, man, this is going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. These people are going to put me up for a Nobel Peace Prize in professional development. I don't think those exist, but they should exist if they don't. And then we go in and we do this, and people write on the surveys that, you know, they'd rather be at home making grocery lists. And so the reason that I say that is because when we take that feedback from people and we really start to implement it based off of what they want and what they need, then we start to realize that the student-based outcomes increase because our audience is more invested and they're connected to it and those kind of things. And so I also think that when we're talking about these bite-sized pieces, making sure that we are connecting with our teachers in advance before we start to flood them with a bunch of stuff that they're trying to weed through and go, well, which one of these is a priority if you've sent me 10 of these? So I think really kind of thinking through that piece and leveraging all of those different aspects.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to say more than that, but that covers a lot. I think just building on all of that, another way to incorporate bite-sized opportunities is I heard Megan say earlier about using the morning meeting structure or the responsive advisory meeting structure for your staff meetings. So another thing is just using those interactive learning structures as well. So we talked about energizers before. So that's another thing you can put in your pocket and take away and use with your students. And it offers that really quick, oh, I've got it. I've got something to take away. The other thing is the articles on the Responsive Classroom website. There are so many, and you can search anything that you're interested in, and you can get so many to choose from. And it literally takes maybe 30 seconds to 3 minutes to read one of these articles. And we're all so busy that that's really helpful. So if you want to just And we have the books, The Power of Our Words, which I will definitely say is like the responsive classroom Bible. I don't know if I have to say Bible here, but it's the responsive classroom book of knowledge. But if you go on the website and you're looking at the articles about language, you can find just little tiny snippets, little pieces, and actual anecdotes and stories, things that worked for teachers. And it's just a really great place to take something to a staff meeting or to your team meeting, and everyone can explore something different, or you can all be working on the same thing. The other thing that, building on Joe's comment about modeling in the moment, I forgot the word that you used exactly, but just going in and sort of purposeful organic modeling, is you can be using those quick coaching guides. And the quick coaching guides that are available are really just anyone can do it. You don't even need practice or experience with coaching. This will kind of guide you through that as a beginner even, or if you're very experienced with coaching, it can also help guide you. So really great questions to ask, ways to guide people to what it is you want them to work on, and just getting teachers to think more deeply as well about their own practice. So that I had one more thing I wanted to talk about, but I forgot what it was. It was a quick coaching, guys. Oh yeah. And then just in terms of bite-sized PD, thinking about things like Responsive Classroom offers these like 3-hour courses now. So making sure that you're looking at those, there's like school-wide implementation and cultivating school culture and things like that, that you can just take in a really short period of time. And as an administrator, I really appreciate those opportunities, because 3 hours is really manageable. It's something that I can fit into my day and still carry on with my work and even try something out straight away.
Both Lyn and Joe have shared such wonderful wisdom. I just have just a few little things to add to that. For me, one of my favorite ways to do professional development is targeted in team meetings. So what I mean by team meetings might be the second grade team or the PE team or the team that teaches the threes in preschool. Getting those groups together is really useful, because not only is it a small group setting where you're all together, but you can really target the PD that you're offering that group to what is important to that group. So I know I had a group of teachers at my school this year where modeling was their biggest question. So we have done our team meetings around modeling. Another group didn't necessarily need that information. They wanted to explore something else. So breaking it down into those small groups is really useful. I also find that the responsive classroom videos that are available online are a wonderful resource. I love using those videos in these team meetings. So for example, the team that was really interested in the modeling, there's like my favorite video of all time in responsive classroom is this kindergarten teacher named Susie, who's teaching kids how to use scissors using the interactive modeling technique. It is so perfect for the teachers that I work with who teach very young children. And we watch that video and we dissect it and we talk about it. And it's amazing how seeing another teacher in action with real children in a real school is so beneficial. And that video is 4 minutes long. It really is such a good bang for your buck. And finally, I'll just add I had a colleague at my former school who was also a responsive classroom consulting teacher like me, and we started putting responsive classroom signage in teacher spaces around the school. So in the workroom, in the teacher bathroom, we put signs that were all about responsive classroom techniques or responsive classroom teacher language. So teachers were always this was always sort of in our environment, right? Like they were kind of absorbing this information if they were standing there making copies or getting coffee or whatever it was. So we found that that was a pretty effective way to just sneak in a little bit more information.
Thank you all so much for sharing. I'm learning so much, and I can tell by all the chatter in the chat that our participants are as well. So thank you for sharing. We did have a question come in that I would love to get out there and hear from whoever is ready to speak to this. Thinking about modeling and the line between modeling for teachers and making them feel like students. So the question is, can you talk about that line between modeling and making teachers feel like we are treating them like children? And I'll invite anybody who would like to jump in to do so.
I can go ahead and speak to this, even though I just talked. So
Please, yeah,
me
join.
again. I think this is really important. And I think sometimes it's really valuable to just acknowledge it. Sometimes on the front end, say, I want to teach you guys a game or a technique that's really useful to use with third graders. So let's put on our third grade hat for just a minute while I teach you this. I think sometimes just that very clear language. And then also, I feel like there are, if we're looking really for something to do with adults in a group meeting, and we're not necessarily teaching them something to do specifically with children, I think there are certain energizers, games, activities that we learn that are particularly wonderful to use with adults. Like I know for me, there's one called Entourage that has to do with rock, paper, scissors. It's a little bit complex. And adults, I never see adults get more excited than when we're playing Entourage. So for me, it's about acknowledging that this is a learning opportunity and also being careful about what I'm choosing when I want people to feel respected as adults in a workplace.
I would also jump in, Megan, and talk about, I was thinking that there are certain interactive learning structures and energizers and so forth that are more developmentally appropriate for adults. And actually, there's a lot of responsive classroom resources that share, like, these are really designed for younger elementary, middle school. And a lot of the middle school ones actually are pretty appropriate for adults because, there's a lot of middle schoolers who are like, oh, I don't want to play a game, So there's adults that feel that way too. But the flip side of that is if you find some that are engaging and are a little more developmentally appropriate, practicing having fun together and starting with the lower stakes, lower risk engagement, and then building it up so that everybody is really enjoying a fun game of Entourage together, is something that can take time. So the same as you would with your students, you start in the beginning of the year with very low risk and some sharing and some building fun times together. If you're doing that with your faculty, and those quick coaching guides can help, or modeling it on morning meeting or responsive advisory meeting, that will also happen, that as you get further along in the year, you can bring in more things that might take a little bit more risk or feel a little bit more uncomfortable because people are getting used to that and they might be more willing and feel more practiced at having fun and joy in a faculty meeting.
I wanted to just add on to that as well, that something that I've experienced is trying to model teacher language more for faculty. And when you're doing that, I think it's really important just to be really transparent at first. So we're going to be working on modeling teacher language. If it sounds condescending to you, just let me know. And I think that just openness is really helpful. So when I was trying it out at first with other adults, there were definitely times when people would say, nope, that's not it. That's condescending. It doesn't work for adults. And okay, yeah, I'm going to fix that. And actually, if you're feeling that way, maybe the way I'm saying it is actually not nice to kids either. Maybe I need to work on the way that that sounds to everyone. So generally, we found in the end that, yeah, what works for adults works for students in that way. Some of us needed to hone a bit of a bit of our tone, excuse the rhyme there, so that we can make sure that it's respectful for all of the audiences. But yeah, I think that transparency is super important so that everyone is aware that you're practicing that, and it doesn't become we're doing this to you. It becomes we're all doing this together for each other.
I'll echo what everybody said, and as a professional model myself, I think all of that is accurate. And I'll just add a couple of things that I have found in my experience. I do think that the full transparency piece is one that I don't think it can be stated enough. Just making sure people understand the purpose and just this idea around explicitly stating why I'm doing this. I also think this, and this is my thought. I will share this. I think you have to have a reputation built with people where they understand that this is something you've had success with. So when you're standing in front of people, especially when they're your colleagues, I think when you're showing them what you're having success with and they know you are successful with your classes, I think that it gives you a lot more ability to stand in front of them and engage them in that way. I think the other thing is this. I will just simply say, in my experience, adult educators have more fun being kids in a modeling session. They are the most disruptive students on the face of the planet because they get into it. They become students better than they become adults sometimes. And so I simply say that to say, when you are thinking about how you model, think about how you engage people. I have seen people who try to model by talking down. And when you talk down, or you're condescending, or you are the expert in the room and you're trying to tell everybody, if you'll just do it my way, but you're not standing there modeling your way. You're modeling a way that has been proven to be effective with students. And so I think making sure that you kind of have a modest, and this is coming from a professional model, right? But having that modesty that comes with being able to connect with your audience, but also trying to figure out what is the appropriate way to engage people. People don't know this about me, and I don't share this with everybody. So why not share it on an open webinar that's recorded and being sent out? But this is something true about me. If I'm in a meeting, or if I'm in a professional development or something, and there's an icebreaker, or there's something that we have to engage with one another, and I'm not aware that it's coming, I become completely in a panic. Like, I don't like it. It's not something that is comfortable to me. It is, and I do this like for a living, right? I'm an educator. I have to be on the fly. But I say that to say you have to consider people like me in your audience as well. And so when you're thinking about the teachers, you can't just assume that everybody in that room loves to play games in front of other people. People are self-conscious about certain aspects about who they are as people. And so making sure that you're being as respectful as you can while still showing the information that needs to be shown.
I completely agree with everything that was said. And since Joe's was last, I'll just add on really quickly, and then I'll share another question. First and foremost, thinking about the different people in your audience is especially important. And I think giving that example is really helpful to see, like, even if you have very bubbly personalities, it might feel different. So scaffolding and building to a place where it feels higher risk and starting with something lower risk can really help with that. The other thing is knowing your audience again. You might need to give a gentle reminder that although we're playing the role of students, the goal isn't to respond to misbehavior today. The goal is to model an effective practice. So sometimes teachers might take that as like a fun way to make their colleagues laugh, and it pulls away from the focus. So giving a gentle reminder of that can be helpful. All right, we have enough time for one more question. I know it's only March, but I know some of us are already thinking about onboarding new teachers in the fall, because that's what we're starting to plan for. So with that in mind, what would we say, our panelists, what's the most important thing to consider in the onboarding of new teachers?
Well, we are on a responsive classroom webinar, so it's okay to say this, but I do think that sending them to the core course, making sure that that has been done, is first and foremost pretty important, to make sure that, you know, the values align and that they know all of the basics with responsive classroom, but just really focusing in on positive community and relationships and connections, and just knowing that that is fundamental, and that's the most important thing that's going to matter in their lives and the lives of their classroom as well. So making sure that they know your school values, that you know that you're building those relationships and connections as much as possible, and that they know that that's first and foremost in their remit as well.
I want to piggyback right off what Lyn just said, because I couldn't agree more about the connections. I think one of a quote that was shared with me early on when I became a responsive classroom presenter was this idea of connect before you correct. And that's for our students, but it's also for our colleagues or teachers who are mentoring or teachers who are entering our school. So finding a way to connect with fellow educators on a personal and professional basis, making them feel safe and comfortable, really building a rapport with them. So then when coaching opportunities present themselves, there's a basis of a comfortable level of familiarity familiarity with each other where we can coach a person and they can take in that information and feel comfortable with it. I think that's huge. And the other thing I would just point out is that it needs to be ongoing. We can't have one meeting at the beginning of the year and say, okay, you guys are good. Good luck. Have a great year. We have to keep circling back around and circling back around, right? It has to just keep happening because as they grow and develop throughout the course of a year in a new school, things are going to keep coming to the surface that they're going to need assistance with, they're going to have questions about, you're going to want to mold and guide them in different ways as you get to know them. So I would say that that professional development has to be ongoing with regular meetings on a consistent schedule.
I agree with everything, and I will add this to it. I do think transparency is critical, and when you were talking about onboarding new people, what you're really talking about is change management. You're bringing somebody into your organization, and you're managing the change that comes with having somebody new on your staff, both the good things and sometimes the things that are a bit bumpy along the way. I have found that if you triangulate the following three things, then typically you'll have a pretty good experience with onboarding. And it is making sure you are clear with your expectations. So when it comes to your professional development and talking through that, if you want people to provide you with what they need professional development, what is the expectation around that? What is the expectation of attending professional development? What is the expectation for people to advocate for the professional development they need? So on and so forth. I think as an organization, as a leadership team, as a culture, you need to know what your non-negotiables around professional development are and transparently tell people those things. So really knowing what those expectations are, and then being able to provide people with an explanation and showing them what supports are available to them. I think that people's level of anxiety comes down when they know what support is there. I think people are more willing to try when they know what support is there. And I think I think people are more open to the idea that the reason why Alyssa is there helping me is because I previously identified as Alyssa's going to come help me. So when you proactively do that, it lowers that and it opens the door for that connection to be made. And then the last piece, and I do think that this is important in professional development, and frankly speaking, I think it's the place probably where we don't do it as well in a school as what we need to, which is to follow up. It is to go and do some observation work. It's to go and do some in the moment feedback. It's to go and do some additional coaching, talking to people, doing follow-up and on two different ends. And one of them is whether or not they're having success with it and whether or not they felt like it was successful for them. And so we need that feedback from them in order to improve what we're doing as a leadership group, but we also need to know what they need from us. And so I really do think that in something as simple as professional development, and if you look at the research that's coming out right now about teacher happiness and what makes teachers happy and what makes them unhappy, this is one of the things that's getting cited the most. And I had somebody say to me the other day, everybody keeps talking about this crisis that we have in education where we don't have enough teachers. We don't have enough teachers. We do have enough teachers. We just have too many people leaving. And the reason why they're leaving is because these spaces, these professional development opportunities where we can reach people where they are and we can help pull them forward with us. And I'll say it. No, never mind. Yeah, I will say it. Here it is. I often say this when I'm talking about working with students with special needs. One of the things that happens in education is there's this bus of standards or content that starts to pull away from kids. And if we don't do a good enough job of helping the kid catch up, then that bus just gets further and further and further away. Well, when you're onboarding a new teacher, if you don't do a good job of making sure they're keeping up with where you're trying to get to as a school and as an organization, then they're going to get further and further away. Well, nobody's happy. Right? Nobody's happy when you are the person that's the outlier. Nobody's happy when you feel like you can't keep up, when you're unsuccessful, you're not. And so unhappy people don't stick around, and that's what causes that particular issue. And so I think professional development is one of those opportunities that we have that really resides within our power that we can do some good work around in our schools to help. And I do think it starts with that onboarding process. So that's a really, yeah, it may be a little early, but still it's never too late to be too early to be. I'll get it right in a minute. It's late here. Yeah, I'm just gonna mute myself.
Thank you so much, Joe. I think you articulated that beautifully. Um, so it is getting a little bit late. We want to be respectful of your time. Thank you to the panelists so much. As Kristen said in the chat, this webinar will end rather abruptly. And so, we'll say goodbye to everybody and then it ends, but you will get a recording, but not certificates. So as we are wrapping this up, take a moment to look at the question on the screen. What is one key takeaway or one action step that you will take to enhance professional development in your setting? It's always good to end with a little reflection to consolidate our own learning. Feel free to share in the chat box so that we can all see everybody's great ideas. And you can keep those going as we share some of the resources that we've mentioned throughout this webinar.
So the first resource that we will highlight, we haven't yet tonight, but we've talked a bit about energizing and getting people interacting with each other. So this one is called Energize Your Meetings, and these are interactive learning structures that are great to use with adults that they can also then take back to their classroom. So this is a very valuable tool if you're leading a PD to bring to your teachers, because you can show them what it looks like as adults and then they can do it themselves. The right side of the screen are all a bunch of different quick coaching guides, which Lyn spoke about and how easy they are to implement. They're like bite-sized pieces of information about a targeted topic to coach teachers or yourself as a teacher through that particular topic. And those are really useful as well.
They're some of my favorites. I love the quick coaching guides. We also, as has been mentioned multiple times, have a number of learning experiences. The summer courses are open, so there's elementary and middle school focused 3-day courses. We also have some one days, as Kristen mentioned. Most of our one days are generally October through March, but either way, on our website, you will be able to see all of the in-person and virtual trainings that we have. And those are offered at the virtual at a number of different time zones to meet all sorts of different needs. And the in-person are offered in a number of locations so that hopefully something is close to you, and take a look as soon as you can, because oftentimes there is an early registration discount.
We also wanted to highlight that we are having a conference this summer. It's here in my hometown of Washington, D.C. So come hang out with me July 9th through 11th. This will be a great place to meet fellow like-minded educators and to really learn a lot from those who have been doing this for a while. You'll see the different strands here. Those are the different buckets of topics that will be discussed there. And there's also a call for proposals on the website. So if you'd like to speak about something, if something has been really successful for you, submit a proposal. You've got about 10 days left to do so. And we'd love to see you there.
So thank you for joining us. Lastly, here are a few emails and our website. Feel free to email any of these if you have questions to RC programs, and if you're interested in bringing Responsive Classroom to your school and having a school-specific professional development, you can reach out to our customer success or educational partnership teams, and they'd be happy to figure out how to make that work for you. Thank you again so much for being with us. We hope that you have a wonderful rest of your school year. This is our last webinar for this series and this school year, and keep an eye out for upcoming webinars for next year. Also, all of our webinars are on our YouTube channel, and you can go back and rewatch, and you will be sent the recording of this at the email with which you registered. So have a great rest of your day or evening wherever you are, and thank you so much for joining us.